Hello and welcome to the Manitowoc Garage. Today we're going to be discussing the CM Labs Virtual Training Simulator. We're going to set it up as an RT and a crawler crane, show you the features and benefits of the simulator. So the CM Labs Training Simulator consists of our three displays. We have our control seat that has our most current CCS operator controls, joysticks, crane functions. Here we have our current CCS RCL display with our current CCS operating system set up for an RT540. And then here we have our main control system where we can set up the type of exercise we want to run and our different cranes for both crawler and RTs. So sitting in the control seat, we're first going to talk about the operator control panel. So from the control panel, after we've loaded the RT exercise, we can select what type of crane we're going to use. We're going to be using a Grove rough terrain crane. The simulator is set up as a Grove RT540. We can start with the crane packed or unpacked. With the crane packed, we can simulate running the outriggers and go through the complete setup, telly the boom out, install hook blocks. With the crane unpacked, the outriggers will already be set up and hook blocks or jibs already assembled. Once we select packed or unpacked, we're going to do unpacked. We're going to select the exercise type. We have basic control exercises. We have CCO test, crane setup, steel structure where you actually assemble a steel structure, working inside of a building, unloading a trailer, skills challenge, and then we have a CPCS assessment. So we're just going to do a basic crane setup, and then you press the load button to load that simulation. So after the simulator loads, what we have is our main control panel here. Under main crane controls, we have different things, RCL bypass. We have our bubble level here that if you're running with the crane packed, you can actually level the crane up. We have different camera views. You can toggle and view the different cameras. You can install main aux chains. You can actually exit the cabin and walk around. We have depth perception aids, and we have the ability to add boom extensions, boom tip camera, change reeving, all of that through the main control panel. What we also have in the main control panel is the environment tab here. So we have the ability to change the environment that the crane is working in. We can change precipitation, we can make it rain, we can make it snow, and change the level of precipitation. We can change the cloud coverage. We can add fall. We can adjust the time of the day or even the time of the year to simulate night and day. We can also adjust wind speed and wind gusts through the environmental tab. So also from the main control, we have the dashboard. The dashboard allows us, when we're running a simulation, to look at statistics that are happening during the simulations, how many cones we've knocked over or hit. You can look at that stuff when you're doing the CCO simulation to see how many hits on cones you had. So different statistics are being recorded at all times through the dashboard on the main operator control station. So next we're going to be talking about the crane RCL and ODM displays. So once you start a simulation, it's going to ask you to set up an operating mode. So this is where you would actually go through the RCL display and tell it whether you have a jib stowed, your outrigger position, things like that. For this, we already have an operating mode set up, so we're just going to look at the main RCL display. So the main RCL display looks just like it does in an RT540. Here you have your current counterweight configuration, you have your boom length, angle, tip height, and radius. We also have slew angle shown here at 0. We're currently at 0. Also on this side, we have our percent utilization, our max allowable load, actual load, and our percent of utilization. And then we also have our current outrigger position in the top RCL display. Our lower display, our ODM display, shows us all the crane information, fuel level, battery voltage, machine RPM. Currently the machine's not running. We can actually use the ignition switch and start the machine, and we actually have an RPM showing there as well. Water temperature, and then all of our indicators here across the bottom, and also our crane function indicators when we actually activate crane functions. So next we're going to look at some of the features of the lower display. So just like on an RT540, you can either use the buttons directly on the display or you can use the jog dial. I'll be going through everything on the jog dial, so you won't actually see me hitting the buttons, but you can see my jog dial is currently in the lower display. And what we're going to do, we're going to look at some of the menu settings within here. So we have our outrigger controls here at the top that allows us to actually run the outriggers. We have all of our limits that we can actually go into, and we can set machine limits for tip height, angle, radius, etc. We also have tools menus where we can actually go in and change meters and feet. We can also go in and we can change joystick parameters. So our joystick parameter button here allows us to go in and change joystick ramps. So if we want to change the tele joystick ramp, we could go in and select it, and we can change the curve of that joystick and change the characteristic of how that joystick comes in. If we want to just adjust boom, we can go over and just adjust boom up and down and change the characteristics of that specific function. Also within these menus we have speeds. So we can also adjust swing speeds, tele speeds, boom up and down speeds, and main and aux hoist speeds as well, all through the display. And this all happens just like it does on CCS, and the simulator will actually pick up on these speeds and run as you have the joysticks configured. You can also set up your eco mode just like on a real crane. And then down here across the bottom we have warning indicators, machine hours, just like on an actual RT540. And again, down here on the side here we have our crane function indicators. When we would turn on crane function for slew, that indicator is going to actually turn green, indicating that that crane function is activated. So with the scenario loaded, you can see on our three displays here that we have our job site. I have my main chains hung on my hook block, and you can see the controls work just like a crane. So I can hoist up, hoist down. And what we're going to do, we're going to swing over and we're going to pick up a load. So again, I can swing, and the hook block reacts just like a crane. I can use it to catch the load. If it starts swinging, I can then get under it. So it gives the operator a lot of feel that a real crane has. So we're going to swing over. And down here in the bottom left, it gives us our target radius, and a little compass indicating where the load is to pick up. So we're going to swing over here, and we're going to hook up our chains. So once we hook up our chains, it's going to give us a location of where we're going to set the load. So down here on my compass, to the right, I have a little arrow that's blue. So I'm going to swing over, and I'm going to set this load down in that blue area. So down at the bottom I have a indicator telling me that I'm going to set the load at 6.4 meters. So I'm going to boom up and have the crane at about 6.4 meter radius. And as I get over here between the cones, it's going to give me a blue indicator of where it wants me to set this load. So over here by my front outrigger, it's going to show me where to set this load. So as I swing into position and hoist down, we're going to begin to start guiding it into place. And once we get the load close to where it needs to be set, the indicator is actually going to turn green. Once it's green, we can then unhook from the load, and we can go back and we can pick up another load. What we also have through the main operator control station, we can add things such as depth perception aids. With a flat screen, it becomes a little hard to view depth. So we have depth perception aids. As I move out here, it gives you a little blue indicator of where the hook is actually hanging to give you a little bit more of a visual as far as depth to go pick up these loads. So it is a very useful tool for both new and seasoned operators. So the additional features of the CM Labs virtual training simulator is that we have the ability to change this simulator from a Grove rough terrain RT540. We can change it to a crawler crane. So we have our armrests here that we would swap from the RT simulator. We also have one pedal that we have to change. This is a free fall pedal for the crawler crane. So you can see here, after we've changed the crane from an RT to a crawler, we've swapped the armrest. So now we have the armrest of the crawler crane with all the CCS controls, jog dial, crawler controls. We also have the other armrest on there as well. So once the armrests have been switched, we simply change this to a crawler crane. And then what's going to happen is the RCL and ODM is going to boot up as a crawler now. So we can do the same thing. We can run through the configurations, set the crane up however we want to configure it, and run through different scenarios with the crawler crane as well. So after we have the simulator booted up as a crawler crane, we can then go through and set up the scenario we want to run. So again, just like the RT, we're going to select the equipment, we're going to select a crawler crane, and then we're going to select the exercise. So we have 4 different exercises. We have crane erection, crane lay down that allows you to stand up a crawler crane and lay down the boom, the proper procedure for that, working in a steel structure, and working in a building. We're just going to select working in a building, and then we are going to load the scenario. So after the scenario loads, just like the RT, we have indicators here. We can exit the cabin, boom lights, our bubble level. We also have, this is how we hook and unhook a load, and we also have our different camera angles that we can adjust camera angles. Up here in the top left, we also have our dashboard that keeps count of collisions, all the statistics while you're running different scenarios as well, just like the RT had. So with the scenario loaded, we went ahead and set up our RCL. So here we have our RCL screen all set up. It shows our counterweight configuration, main boom angle, luffing jib angle, our radius here, and then we have our utilization across the bottom with our load utilization here. It also shows us boom lengths up here in the corner. What we also have, we're going to use the jog dial. Just like the RTs, we have the same style jog switch, so we can scroll through different menu options. I'll be using the jog dial to go into the menus. So here we have our setup, so we can go in and configure the crane. We have the ability to change from metric to standard measurements. We also have system information, load charts, brightness of the display, data recorder, and then we also have some software information here as well. So we can then move the jog dial down to the lower display. I'll move it down here and go through some information on the lower display. So we have our RPM, temperature, oil pressure, our regen status, fuel level, battery voltage, and some more indicators there. We can also go into some menus here, so we can look at individual drum circuits. We can look at drum 1 here and see the circuit for drum 1 here on the display in live time. When we run the joystick, we can see the solenoid shift and see some information on each individual circuit. We also have sort of our diagnostic screen, so we can go in and we can look at all the different modules on the seat here individually, joysticks, SCM, the jog dial, the travel controllers, and all the different joysticks and ODM and RDM displays. So back out to the menu here, we also have down here at the bottom more error codes. So we have crane error codes, engine error codes, our hour meter. We also have the ability to adjust joystick speeds. So just like the RT, we can go in here and adjust speeds for drum 1 through 4. We also have our swing speeds there as well. Also, down here at the bottom, brightness for the display, and then some software information down here as well. So a lot of information through the displays once you have everything set up, and again, everything's live time on here. If I give the machine throttle, you can see that it actually throttles up on the display here. So everything's as realistic as we can make it for a simulator. So now we've covered the main setup for the machine through the RCL. We got the scenario loaded, so we're getting ready to pick a load here. Down in the bottom left, just like the RT had, we have the radius at which the load is going to be picked up at, and gives us sort of a compass where the load is. So we're going to hoist down and go ahead and hook up this load. So once we get the chain hooked up here, you'll get an indicator saying the load's being hooked up. And then it's going to give you a target icon. So now it's telling me I'm going to have to swing to the right, and I'm going to set the load out at 74 feet. So I can go ahead and hoist the load up and then begin swinging it towards my target here on the right. So just like a job site, we have people walking around, we have obstacles here, we got a trailer we got to kind of swing over. And you can see coming in the picture here, we have our target where we're actually going to set this load down. So as we begin swinging over here, you're going to see we're going to kind of line the compass up and get the load sort of lined up here, and then we're going to begin to boom it down into place. So we're going to make our RCL radius match the target radius indicated on the screen. And once we get it close, we start to set it down, and it's going to kind of self-guide in there, just like the RT did. And it's pretty realistic. Everything kind of swings around a little bit. You got to kind of work it in there nice and slow. We're going to get it self-guiding in. And once the target turns green, it's going to indicate that you can set the load down. Try to get a little closer here. And as the target turns green, we're going to set the load down, and then we can unhook from it. And then down here in the bottom left, it's going to give us another indicator saying swing to the left. We're going to pick up another load at 64 foot radius. So again, everything's very realistic. You got obstacles, you got people walking around the job site. Again, for novice operators or even experienced operators, it's a very useful tool. Thanks for checking in. Be sure to tune back in for future videos.